something? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
It's easy feelings long to keep. They get by a minute into force. Oh, I didn't notice it's all getting full. But only when got been by chance, I got here.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cannabis and Coffee with me, Tamarijuana. It's a beautiful day in these Kootenays this morning, and we are looking forward to this BC provincial election. Everybody's got pre-posting now. You can go out and vote now, or the election date is May 9th. So this morning, I'd like to welcome Randal MacNair, who is our candidate for our local NDP, and Keith Komar, who is also the Libertarian candidate for our local area. So welcome this morning, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara.
So I guess we'll start out with Randal first, just for a quick minute here, and then we'll get to Keith here. I'd like to introduce Randal. He's our NDP candidate, and as well, Randal was the former mayor of Fernie and has been very community active for many, many years out in this East Kootenay area. So why don't you give us a little background and rundown on what your policy platforms are?
Specifically with respect to cannabis, or?
Yes. Actually, we can just kind of run down. I know we'll get the cannabis too, but just give a generalization and then into the cannabis, sure.
Okay, sure. So when I've been out on doorsteps, it's really apparent that British Columbians are falling behind. It's life is not getting easier, and I'm sure Keith is going to agree with me on that one. And so we have three commitments. And the first is to make life more affordable. And we're going to do that through a number of ways, including some tax cuts for sort of middle income folks. And we need to deliver the services that are important to people: healthcare, education, and rebuild some of the systems like hospitals and schools, which have been neglected over the last decade and a half. And then, thirdly, our third commitment is an economy that works for you. And right now, and Keith can dive into this if he'd like, we've had a government that really is focused on the corporate interests of British Columbia, and we need to roll that back to the people on the street. And that's sort of our underlying philosophy. And we want to take a collaborative approach to it. In my time in office, I was in office for 15 years, I discovered that working together is a lot better. And lots of people have lots of different ideas, and Keith and I have seen that on the campaign trail during our various forums. We don't know, not everybody agrees necessarily, but Keith will come up with something. I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea, or one of the other opponents may come up with something. So we got to bring all those good ideas and work together to make them happen. So coming from municipal government, where you can collaborate very readily, I have some reservations about the system that we have at the provincial and federal level, where there's much less, or appears to be certainly much less collaboration. With respect to cannabis, we need to, safety and health are sort of the two priorities. And as both of you know, and many of your listeners will know, this is something that's being determined by the federal government, and it's going to come down to the responsibility of provincial and municipal governments as far as the regulation and distribution is concerned. So we have a really good piece of work in the framework for legalization and regulation of cannabis in Canada, and I see that as the foundation for not just British Columbia but all provinces moving forward. And I think municipalities really are going to have to prepare for some big changes to addressing dispensaries and recreational sales. So organizations like the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, which represents all municipalities in BC, they need to get involved as well to help those municipalities adapt as quickly as possible to the changing legal framework. So does that give you a sense of kind of where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. And there's some very good points in all of that. And of course, I think healthcare and education are two of the main priorities of most taxpayers in this, day and age. Keith, where are you stance on? I know we've talked, briefly about some of your, stances on education and stuff. So we don't want to dwell too much into, all that little stuff. We want to more hear about what your policies are for that.
For sure. Well, as for education, the Libertarians would really like to move to a voucher system. We think that most of the money that's being wasted in education right now is at the administration level. So although the system is funded with almost $10 billion in BC, we find that only $4 or $5 billion of that is making it to the children. So our system would totally revamp that. It would put all the money in the hands of the children and allow the parents to have the choice in the schools. And at the same time, it would allow teachers to set curriculum and innovate to the area that they're in. So really our platform is all about choice, and education is definitely an example of where we'd like to see some choice. As for healthcare, we see this as a huge furnace and we're just shoveling money inside it. And we need to do something drastically to improve that. Now, we don't have all the answers, but again, we're a free market party. So we would like to see some private options develop within the public system to allow people to have access to medicine, because really what we see right now is one long straight line, and we don't think that that's serving the people. So now let's switch to our cannabis policy, because I think for the people on this show, you're going to see a real disconnect from the other parties to what the Libertarians are doing. And our biggest thing right now is we need to stop the arrests as soon as we can. So if the Libertarians would get elected, we would immediately talk to the police services, do our best to renegotiate that contract and stop people from getting arrested tomorrow. Because we think that that's something that the province can do, and it's a service that they would be doing to the community while we waited for legalization to roll out. On that point, we do not see the framework that the federal government is rolling out as a very good model for the provinces to adapt. What we see right now is the federal government monopolizing production. They're about to take the craft cannabis industry and smash it. And we definitely don't think that that is a good way to move forward in this. We believe that the craft industry are the ones who have built this and pushed the envelope. And really the only reason we're talking legalization is because of that craft industry. So to have it pushed out by a federal government in the name of safety or whatever other reason that they do that, we think it's a disservice to the people of BC. And we would like to advocate and fight for your right to have these small businesses and industries and allow BC to thrive.
Absolutely. And I know it's a tough question, and it's a tough handling because it's coming from the federal level, and it's kind of leaving everybody that has been involved in and let's face it, illegal market, crafting market, people that are running dispensaries now, it's leaving everybody kind of like wondering, where is that going to leave it? And there's such an opportunity here for both municipalities, provincial and federal government to make job creation, to actually let people that have been working diligently, that are given and have given them the ability to go forward with legalization, such a vast difference. You know what I'm saying here? Like, I know from Randal's point of view, I see that, the government wants to, keep a handle on healthcare and keep the public safety. And I think there's a huge misconception about cannabis still on all levels.
Oh, and I agree with that 100%, Tamara, that these edicts that are coming down from the federal government are actually coming from people who are not involved in the industry. And it's unfortunate that there's not a lot more people who are a part of the community, who are in government, because I think that's where the disconnect comes from. It's not that the people who are forming these policies don't care, and it's not that they don't want to, include the community. It's that they just don't understand what's going on and what we're doing. So I would like to bridge that gap between the community and the politicians and allow for that conversation to happen. Because I really believe that if they understood what was happening, they wouldn't want that to go down. Because as far as I know, Randal especially is a small businessman. He wants to see the small business in the community thrive. So at that point, between what he would like to see and what the rules are that are coming down, there's going to have to be that bridge. And it's going to take some very, very strong political will to make it happen.
Right.
So it really is going to come down to who we elect in this election to see what we get. Because if we elect people who don't have that will, we're not going to get the legalization that we want in BC.
Right. And BC is, pretty openly running the industry and has been for 50 years. Now, Randal, you were the mayor of Fernie for many years. And what did you find on the municipal level? Did you find that cannabis was a real issue in Fernie for, your for the RCMP?
I would say, just sort of reflecting back on various reports, we're a resort town, so there is a cannabis culture, if you will, there, and certainly, but it didn't really come into the municipal realm all that often. I left municipal government in 2014 before there was this dialogue with respect to federal legalization. But I've had conversations with folks since that about bringing dispensaries in, ensuring that access is available, and so sort of from just looking at it from a municipal perspective, municipalities they're the government that's on the ground. They're the government where the dispensaries and the retail outlets are going to be in and adjacent to our neighborhoods. So we need to ensure that as I said earlier, that access can happen as effectively and as safely as possible. And I very much agree with Keith. The craft industry, we've seen what the craft liquor industry has gone through. When I was a kid, the wine was BC wines weren't all that well respected, and they've grown into a world-class industry. Beer has grown from being completely dominated by a handful of majors to many craft breweries, and I very much agree with Keith that we need to cultivate that craft industry, because that's how communities are going to get the most benefit, and it has to obviously be done legally and safely and create good access. And from, again, if I just speaking for myself, but I think this applies to our government as well, that let's talk to people on the ground who know what's going on. So, including, as Keith describes, the craft producers, medical cannabis advocates, and users in the conversation, along with government and law enforcement, et cetera. But I think that we're all going to benefit to the greatest degree with that sort of back to the roots craft industry. There's going to be a variety. Obviously, Labatt's is still a big player in the beer industry, but we want to create an environment where those craft industries can really thrive, because that's shop local.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that too, 100%. And it's tough being an activist that's watched this kind of all play out over the last 10 years and watched, the conservative government actually implement the licensed production program, and making it so that the smaller licensed production sites didn't even have a chance out of the gate. And I think that's the most disheartening thing about watching this whole thing fold out, is watching how so many people had such high hopes for business and for future. And now with the government saying, okay, well, we're just going to have these huge licensed production sites. But if you look at the wording in that, licensed production means somebody with a licensed to produce, which is a patient. So in hindsight, that's some other way we can kind of look at this whole program as moving forward, that anybody who has an ACMPR would, also benefit maybe a little bit from that, which would go back into healthcare. Because so many of these people are living on governmentally funded disabilities. And if they're able to then, produce their garden into a business that would allow them to get off the government assistance, that would then benefit every community across this country. Because I'm not sure what the numbers are statistically for our disability numbers for our economic pull. And I think that's something that the federal government and the provincial governments aren't looking at. They look at the bottom end of how much it costs per person, and how much it costs per tax dollar. But when it comes down to it, if you could actually make those people have something that they could do that would give them an income, so that they wouldn't be pulling from the government coffer and putting money back into the government coffers. I don't know if that makes any sense to either one of you, but that's something that I think
sure.
that, we should be able to see that, healthcare is a big issue. And this morning it came out that we have more seniors in Canada now than we have babies.
Yes.
And that's almost frightening. That's a frightening statistic. So, and as those seniors get older, of course, then the disability, because a lot of those people didn't get pensions. Okay, let's face it. Very few jobs in this day and age offer pension plans. You have to rely on your Canada pension plan. And that's pittance. So again, then the people that are working are paying more tax dollars than to be able to take care of the seniors. Now, if we took these seniors and showed them how to grow a little bit of cannabis and let them have an actual market for that, not being just seniors, wouldn't that be, some way of looking at the benefits towards the rest of the economy?
I would like to chime in, and then Randal, if you don't mind, you can have after me.
Yeah.
What I see right now with the disability and the CPP and the way we're handling this is I see a government who has spread itself too thin, and it is trying to do everything for everybody, and it is accomplishing nothing for anyone because they're just spread too far apart. So as a libertarian, what we're trying to do is we want to roll back government in areas that it is not useful. And there's so many redundancies that we're seeing in BC right now in the government. And as we dig deeper into these policies and these organizations and groups that they've set up, we're finding just layer after layer of redundancy. So we want to roll that all out and get rid of all of that so that the government can actually focus in on the CPP and the disability. These are commitments that we've made to the public. They're social contracts that the government has offered to people, and we need to honor them. But we also need to honor them in a way that's respectful to the people on the other end. So as we've been talking in the last little while, the libertarians have actually come up with something. We want to set up a whole department, and Randal kind of started us down this way with he was talking about a mental health department, and it was to just separate those people and actually give them some type of government teeth to help them. And from that conversation, Randal, what we've decided is we want to set up a disability department, and we want to include physical, mental, and financial disability in this program. So what it would look after is it would take the welfare program on, it would take the seniors on, and it would take the people on disability. And from that, we want to turn this into a program that has a 4-year end to it, and the outcome being getting these people back into society, whether it's through school or through a work program, something to make them viable to themselves and to the community again. And we can see cannabis definitely, Tamara, being a part of that, where we want to see these small growers grow. And you're right, the license that you have as a medical grower is no different than the federal government and their issuing of this LP license. So we want to see that disconnect removed. If you're licensed to grow for yourself and it's okay for you to do it and the cannabis is safe, that cannabis should also be available to the dispensary for sale to other patients who don't have access to that medicine that you're making. So that's some of the things that we would like to do in the near future to help not just disability, but the cannabis industry.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Randal. What do you think about that whole?
Well, I really appreciate these conversations because the two of you are so much more immersed in this issue than I am. So I'm always learning, and that really helps me to form my thoughts, and I can take those thoughts and ideas forward. Back to small distribution of medical cannabis. That's something that, again, can we make that happen and still ensure the safety and the quality? If we can do that, let's have that discussion. Obviously, my philosophy with respect to regulation is a little bit different than Keith's, but pushing those different ideas forward is important. What I'd like to touch on with respect to medical cannabis is the whole training issue, both training and research. And as you guys may know, my wife's a physician, and I know that doctors have really struggled with prescriptions and where cannabis is appropriate and how it can be best used. So over the next really probably decade, there's going to have to be a lot of effort put into research and training those physicians, support workers, and nurses so we can take best advantage of medical cannabis. It's just in its infancy right now, but I have a friend who's a nurse who's working through training so she can support patients, and we need to create those sorts of resources in every single community. And in some communities, it will probably just be one or two people, small communities, but that training and awareness raising really needs to be a big part of of the next steps with respect to medical cannabis and its effective use. I would hazard to say that the medical community, the research community, has only scratched the surface as far as where the uses and benefits can be.
Absolutely. Well, the government's actually had, let's say, almost 15 years of people actually using cannabis for medicine. And now with the legalization moving forward, maybe now they can put some protocol in so they can actually write the research that they have down on paper and actually get it out to the general public, because it's not that it hasn't been researched. It's just it's almost like they just didn't want to hear us. It's just that they didn't want to actually believe that something as natural as a plant could actually make people feel better, that it has the possibilities of people not using pharmaceutical drugs. And I think that's something that, moving forward with legalization, we're going to get those answers. And I'm really positive that some doctors out there are really interested, that they're curious. Like, I'm sure that there's doctors out there that don't want to keep feeding their patients toxic, drugs, because that's how when you look at the opioids and you look at, Oxycontin and the fact that it breaks down your kidneys and livers, none of that stuff's good for us. So I'm hoping that, positively looking forward, that our health community will take a look at cannabis as being the most positive move forward for many patients.
I'm really hoping that that's where we end up with this, Tamara, because as we see on the ground, we see a very, very large opioid issue developing in all of these communities in BC. And as we discussed yesterday, there has to be harm reduction, and harm reduction doesn't cost anything. Harm reduction starts with the conversation and the implementation of getting these opioids that people are taking separated from the cannabis. I know where I am in Cranbrook. I stay at the Courtyard Inn, and this is a very low end of income and society here. And I stay here for the main purpose of connecting with these people to see what I can do to help them. And I think what I see right now, the biggest problem in the cannabis industry is that it's still on the street. The people are still buying off of street dealers, and they don't just carry cannabis with themselves. They have what I call the kit. They have everything from A to Z. And when they run out of cannabis, they're a business person at that point, and they're just going to push whatever they have in their pocket upon you. And I've had more than one person in this complex come up to me and say, Keith, can you help me find some cannabis? Because I'm really I would like to have some, but I'm at the point where the guy who's selling it to me only has opioids, and I want those now because I can't fill my need. So we really need to be seriously looking at what we're doing by keeping this off of the dispensary shelf and on the street, and how we're actually harming people with this. This is something we could address tomorrow as a society and as a municipality. And I don't think that a lot of the people who are running for MLA at our level, Randal, and it's not a knock, it's just a lack of knowledge. And I don't think you guys are connected to that, and you don't see that. So I want that conversation to come on the table, and I want all of the candidates to be aware, so that regardless of whether I win or not, that this harm reduction is looked at very seriously and very quickly, because it's a serious problem, and we need to address it really quickly, or we're going to lose more and more people. And ultimately, go ahead, Tamara.
I don't think the average person that works on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't come down to the level of reality, realizes that it's easier to find a pill, an opiate, or anything than it is to find cannabis. When they're talking about saving the children, they should be making sure that their cabinets are closed at home, because it's far easier for somebody to go out and find cocaine or heroin or MDMA, acid, or anything that's a harder drug, even in this town, than it is to find a bag of pot. And that is the reality right now. And that is the reality about why fentanyl and why these kids are dying in front of our eyes in Vancouver, specifically, I guess. But even with the dispensaries that are readily available in Vancouver, there are dispensaries on every corner out there, and the people are still dying. And that's because doctors won't sign their paperwork, or that the high that they're getting from cannabis is not what they're looking for. So we're back to the mental health issues. But like I said, cannabis is not a cure-all for everybody, right? We've said that over and over again. We're not here to push it on anybody. We're here to just educate and make everybody, have a choice in their awareness of what would be best for them. So again, like I said, this isn't a, show where we're pushing cannabis use on anybody, but we would like to educate everybody that we can about the fact that it's easier to get opioids than it is to get cannabis. And like I said, the choices are, like, you could have, like I said, maybe the harm reduction end of it, like in Vancouver, there's access on every corner.
But the problem, Tamara, in Vancouver is they're still spending resources on the prosecution and the arrest of the people who are in the industry. They're not really hitting the people on the street anymore, but they're going after the businesses. And those resources are what we need to be spent dealing with the opioid crisis. There's money in the system, and we just need to stop arresting the people for cannabis and drop that end of it and focus on the problem.
Pretty much has, I think. Vancouver's kind of left the dispensaries alone. The only reason cannabis culture was, kind of targeted in that whole sting from Toronto. Like, Toronto's basis in Ontario is a bit different than the stance in BC. Hence why we've talked prior on this show about the federalization, or federal government, legalizing and regulating and kicking it back to the provinces, the patchwork of regulation that we're going to have across the country when it comes to cannabis and in general. Even with the age restrictions, like, what's your stance on the age restrictions, Randal, when it comes to cannabis?
I think it needs to be something that's easily implementable and enforceable. And so right now we've got it's 19 for alcohol and cigarettes, and it just makes sense for it to be the same. I respect Keith's logic for his age, but I think 19 makes sense in our province, and that harmonization reduces any unclarity that might happen. So that's my personal position, and that's yeah.
That's awesome. And Keith, what's your stance on the age restriction?
As I said in the debates, that I believe myself, if the military can call on you to go and kill another person in the name of the government, then you should be allowed to have access to cigarettes, alcohol, and cannabis, and any of those other adult sins that they have. Saying that, though, I do agree with Randal that harmonization is the easiest way to do this. So I would be willing to accept 19 in BC. As a libertarian, we would push for that age to be dropped to 18 for all three of those. So I agree that the harmonization is the way to go, but I would push for all of that to be lowered to 18. To me, they have to. they have to be the same. Those numbers have to match up. If you can go to the military, you have to have access to adult things as well. So.
Well, it makes me wonder then too, it being, the age difference being 19 in British Columbia and 18 in Alberta, because if Alberta stays with the same, like you said, alcohol and tobacco regulation, it would be 18 in Alberta. So that would then mean what, you got kids hopping across the border to Alberta, that are 18, so they can go buy, cannabis out there. And with the law being so that they're not going to be charged and have a criminal record. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I mean. The patchwork and harmonization is where we're going to have to look at this, across the country. So that means provincial governments are going to have to work with other provincial governments to kind of work this through. It's going to be a complicated show for the next, little while here, trying to get everything planned out. I don't wish that upon either one of you, the two of you that, which one gets in. I don't wish that upon you, because that's going to be a tough, never mind everything else that's going to be put in front of you. But the cannabis issue is going to be something that's really tough to kind of pan down.
Yeah, it's 9:30, Tamara. I need to be at the high school, and I know Keith is going to wander over the precinct as well. Thank you very much. This was always a good conversation, and I always learn something when I talk to the two of you. So thanks for having me on, and have a beautiful day. Thanks to the listeners for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Randal, and good luck with at the high school there. The kids have some hard questions for you.
I hope so. Right on. Thanks, Tamara.
You bet. You have a great day.
I'll give you a couple more minutes, Tamara, and then I'm going to go as well.
Awesome.
I think you touched on a really, really important issue, because we are one of those regions that is very close to Alberta. So that concern may not come up in Vancouver, but it'll certainly be an issue here in the Kootenays. I know when I was growing up and we were 18 years old in the valley, we would, we called it the Coleman trip, or we were heading to the Crow, and we would pick up our beer and we would come home with it. So you'll find that by every regulation that's ever passed by government, there's also the pipeline and the way around it, and children, especially children at that age, are going to find their way around it. So by passing heavier regulation, you really you're not modifying behavior, other than the fact that you're forcing that person to find a way around. So really, we need to be looking at these as sensible conversations, as opposed to edicts that we get. And I think that's a lot of the biggest problem, is that edicts come down from up top, as opposed to the conversation with the people on the ground. And that's what we would like to see a lot more of in government, is that conversation on every issue needs to be had with everybody.
Absolutely. And grassroots, that's where the cannabis community kind of started. Well, not kind of, did, with, a few people, working towards trying to lobby the government into something that they've actually finally come to, which is, a regulatory system that's not palatable for everybody. And I think that's the best way to put it, is that it's not going to work for everybody. It just, some of it's so ridiculous, I can't even put it into words.
Well, and now what they're setting up is they're setting up a fight on all of these minor little issues that we're going to argue on. The 4-plant rule, the 100-centimeter rule, all of these little things that we're going to be fighting on. And to me, it's the shell game, because really all that matters is who's producing this and where is this money going to be going. So they've shifted the conversation onto, this is a health issue, and then we're going to fight out front while they quietly roll out who's going to sell it. And if we don't keep that conversation on who's producing this cannabis, we're going to lose that. So I really think that that's where we need to be with the conversation, and we need to stay like dogs or horses with blinders on. We need to stay on that and never let that go, because if we do, the minute we stop talking about it, they're going to roll it out, and then we're going to be crafted out. So
right. Absolutely. I totally agree about that. Okay, my dear, well, I'm going to let you go so you can get off to the high school and make sure you hold these guys' feet to the fire.
That's my job.
Thanks very much for coming on, Keith. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Always. Thank you, Tamara. And I want to thank everybody for listening today, for, giving us the chance to say our piece. And
absolutely.
I would want to add one more thing. If you're not thinking of voting, please go out and vote. If you need a ride, I'm around in town. I'll gladly take anybody there. I don't need you to vote for me. I just want you to vote, because I think it's very important that we have our voice heard.
Great. And that's true. Just get out and vote.
Yes. All right. You have a wonderful day, Tamara.
You too. Thanks very much, Keith.
Take care.
Take care. Okay, we're going to go to a quick break right now, and I'd like to thank my sponsors, who are 12 High Chicks Magazine, Remos Nutrients, Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, MUM, Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, the Haley Rose Foundation, and my song is Run, Run, Run by a Killing Time Band. We'll be right back.
Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a registered nonprofit organization that advocates for access to cannabis as medicine. Political action in the courts at all levels of government established a federal medicinal cannabis program that is second to none. However, our work continues. If you are one of the millions of sick, disabled, or terminally ill people in Canada that does not have a doctor willing to offer medicinal cannabis as an alternative, we can help. We offer appointments every Monday for qualified patients across Canada who wish to access licensed physicians who will evaluate your condition and help you decide if medical cannabis is right for you. Call 613-967-9888 in Ontario or 250-581-1053 in British Columbia, or visit us at our website, www.canadiantherapeuticcannabispartners.com, or on Facebook at facebook.com/CTCP Society.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Try to slow me down. Oh, no. My feet barely touch the ground. Yeah, yeah. I just need to spread my wings. The wind lifts me up, and the blue sky sings. Try to get in my way. Oh, no. You're just going to spoil my day. Oh, yeah. I just want to run and play. The sun is shining, a smile sets upon my face. Gotta do what makes you feel good. Yeah, 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 yeah. Go running like you probably should. Come on now, run, run, run. Children are playing and the birds are singing. Don't tweet, 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 so sweet, yeah. They fly on while we all sing.
All right. Well, that was the Killing Time Band, and I love that band. I had the opportunity to see them when I was out at the Toronto Pretty Yourself Expo a few years ago. Awesome band. Anyways, I've got no guests left. They've gone off to the high school to do a debate. which has been happening regularly around here. I haven't actually made it to one because I've been actually kind of staying anti-partisan and not getting involved because I have a stakeholders package with the Ministry of Transport. But that being said, back around to the cannabis policies, you can see the difference between the Libertarians and the NDP, and how, Libertarians are very pro-cannabis and the NDP are kind of on the fence, wanting to talk about it, wanting to have a conversation about it, but still having that big party head above them, kind of telling them what they have and haven't to say. The BC Liberals, I didn't even really approach them to come onto the show because the fact that I know that their stance is pretty much 25, I think, was Christy Clark's stance on the age limit for it. And I really don't find that appealing at all. I think 19 is even a little bit high. I think 18 would be better. But, and that's going to be, again, with the whole border cross jumping, like, Keith was mentioning the fact that, back when we were all 18 in BC running to Alberta because we could get beer in the Crow's Nest Pass at 18, where the liquor laws out here are 19. And I think that still happens quite a bit, even now, with the kids running back and forth across the border to get liquor. So that's, being said, will that happen with the legalization age limits that are going to be put on? Again, too, with the crossing of the U.S. border, how will that maintain with legalization and the age limits that they're going to put on, leaving the black market still open for a lot of these kids that are still smoking cannabis? I think statistically they're saying that kids are starting to smoke cannabis anywhere between the age of 14 and 16, which, in hindsight, isn't really a great thing, but it's not, they're drinking too. And again, the taboo that's put on all of it. So I think that's something that our politicians really need to look at when it comes to the future of legalization in this country, as well as, going to speak to the mayor yesterday. That was an eye-opener too, just for the fact that he believes that everything should be left to the province and to the federal government, that until they give the signal that it's okay legally to have dispensaries running in Cranbrook, they're not looking at it. They don't even really want to talk about it. It was, even with the opioid problem, trying to bring in the harm reduction. And the fact, like Keith had mentioned again too, that, most dealers have more than just cannabis in their pockets. And that's where our kids are being introduced, as well as to your pharmaceutical cabinet in your own house. If your kids are, getting access to your opioids, if you're taking them, if you're, a sick person, you have to be careful of that. Lock your stuff up. We have to lock our cannabis up. I tell you, if we have the, CPS ever come into your house and you have a child in the house and don't have your medicinal cannabis locked up, you're gonna hear about it. I've been there. So, that's something else that we have to all be mindful about the fact that our kids are, in amongst us, and that we want to make sure that it's safe for everybody, as well as, have patients have the access that they absolutely need. And I mentioned that as well to the mayor, that, driving to Kimberley isn't an option for a lot of people that are on disability, that don't have access to a vehicle. That 35-kilometer drive is, not dignified access for patients in Cranbrook. And the fact that they don't have, that ability to get there. So there was other, speaking to him as well about vapor lounges and the fact that that was something else that would be an option for the town. Again, really not wanting to hear what we have to say, pushing it back off onto the province. So I really didn't walk out of it was productive to a point, but I didn't really walk out of the meeting feeling all warm and fuzzy about the fact that we were going to, see a dispensary opening anytime soon in this community. Anyways, that being said, we're going to wrap the show up a little sooner than I thought this morning because of the fact that my guests had to go off, and that's great. I really want to thank them both again for coming on the show. It's not easy to always get, people to have time to come on and especially talk to, a local show like this. So again, I'd like to thank Randal MacNair, who is our NDP candidate, and Keith Komar, who is our Libertarian candidate. And I'd like to thank my producer, Al Rapp, and my sponsors, who are 12 High Chicks Magazine, Ramos Nutrients, Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners, MUM, Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, Haley Rose Foundation, and I will talk to you all next week. You have a great week. Bye.
Tune into the Pace Radio Show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Allison Murden, along with myself, Al Grant, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at lifestyleradio.ca.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Hi, it's Deb from BMA Hydroponics. Whatever you are growing, from vegetables to medicinal cannabis, we have everything you need to succeed. From seed to harvest to processing and extracting, we carry all the brand name products that will help you produce, process, and consume high-quality medicine. Our knowledgeable staff of qualified growers have decades of experience with home production, and all possess either MMAR injunction status or an ACMPR registration certificate. We offer the largest variety of products available anywhere, and if you don't see what you're looking for, just let us know and we'll find it for you. Visit our store at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, Ontario, or visit our website at bmahydroponics.com. We can be reached at 613-967-9888, Monday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/BMAHydro and drop us a line at BMA. Our motto is your success is our success.
This is Bubbles from the trailer park, and they're playing some fucking excellent music on lifestyleradio.ca. I hope I didn't sound too nervous there.
Please hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
It's time for a change, to rethink things our way. Gotta know by now that this ain't working. Gotta rip it on down and start again. You know it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak. I see my friends every day, trying to live their lives their own way. While you worry about the rent, while they're living in pain, but you won't grant them the right to take it away. You know it doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Nothing? Why not? I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual.